Hey, what's going on everyone? Romeo here, a fellow Spanish language learner. In this video, I'm going to show you how to digitize your physical copies of your books so that your books that look like this can actually end up looking like this. A digital copy that has its own conveniences. And I'm going to do that by actually breaking down and showing you the step-by-step process I use to digitize this physical copy of this book that I have not yet done. But first, let's talk about some important factors. The first thing you have to recognize about digitizing your books is that it's not necessarily the easiest and most fun thing to do. So before you consider this do-it-yourself project that I'm going to introduce to you, the easiest way to digitize your book is to just find a book digitization service. But with the digitization service, there's also some pros and cons. The first thing that you should understand about using a digitization service is that there are two main ways to digitize your books. The first method is called a destructive method. With the destructive method, they actually tear your books apart. And that's exactly what this tutorial is going to teach you to do, because as you can see, this book right here, Don Quixote, it's wrapped in a rubber band because I have already tore it apart. Also, with the destructive method, if you send your book in and choose a destructive method, you are very likely not going to receive that book back. So if you care about your books and you don't want to actually have them tore apart, you don't want to use the method that I'm going to show you because it's a destructive method. The other method that you could choose if you choose a digitization service is what's called a non-destructive method. The non-destructive method is a method in which they actually scan your book in, but they don't tear it apart and they return the book to you. It's a little bit more expensive, but if you care about your books, that's the type of method that you will want to choose. And among the non-destructive methods, at least this website here has several other options that you can choose, and those options depend on the quality of the scan that you want them to provide for you. Now, the one thing that makes digital scanning services not ideal for me, at least, even if I want a destructive method, is the fact that it costs money. Because it costs money, often it's not worth it to me to digitize a book that I paid money for. For example, the book that I'm going to use in this tutorial costs literally $6 on Amazon. This book is 115 pages. And if we go to this website here, $1 scan, which is a representative price of what it will cost, they have a calculator that you can use. If you go to their pricing page and then you go to the bottom of their page, they have a calculator. And so if we enter for this book, the number of pages, and then you choose the option, which I'll talk about later, OCR. And then you want to choose the book title to be the PDF name. And if you want express service, meaning you want your book to come back to you within 5 to 10 days after you send it to them, high quality scan, already it's $14.40 just for these few options. If you want another option, let's say a high quality touch-up scan, then again, you're at $18 for a book that costs $6. Also, if you're someone like me and had a bunch of physical books, like imagine paying $18 for all of these books, not including all the other books that I had. So for that reason, I actually don't use a scanning service. I use my own do-it-yourself method. Also, before you go through the process of digitizing your books and putting in the work to do so, make sure you check out my previous tools video that informs you that it may be possible to get a digital version of your book by doing a simple search on the internet, seeing if the book is already sold in a digital format, or if you purchase your book, let's say an audiobook from Audible, see if a digital copy or a PDF version already comes with the book. So hopefully that information was helpful before you actually get into digitizing your book. If all of that was helpful and you are now well informed, but you still want to digitize your books in a do-it-yourself manner, then let's go ahead and get started. First thing first, you're going to need 4 main tools when you start cutting up your books. The first tool that you're going to need is you're going to need some type of razor. And you can find a set of razors on Amazon for less than $5. The next thing that you will need is a cutting mat. And a cutting mat helps you prepare your book. You can use your cutting mat, lay it over your desk, and after you lay it over your desk, you can make all your cuts without ruining your table or your desk or whatever platform you're using to actually cut up your book. After your cutting mat, you're also going to need, or I prefer to use, a guillotine paper cutter. A paper cutter is just going to make the process much more easier to cut your book and much faster to cut your book as opposed to using something like scissors. And of course, it goes without saying that you're going to need a scanner. And the scanner that you purchase, let's say if it's a Epson scanner, usually comes with software that allows you to scan in your book, and possibly software that allows you to actually recognize your characters upon scanning in your book. In addition to that software, I use Adobe Pro, which also has print recognition and allows you to do the last part of the process, which is create bookmarks for your digital books, if that is something you want to do. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that your mat is on your table so that when you make your cuts, you don't cut too firmly and then actually end up cutting your undersurface, whatever that surface is. When you make your first cut, especially if your book is big, you want to make your first cut somewhere in the middle of the book. Once you make your first cut down the middle of your book, you want to put one half to the side, and then you want to do the same thing with one of your halves. You want to cut through the middle of that first half. And ultimately, you want to get to the point where your halves are going to be small enough so that they're going to fit in your guillotine with no problem. Of course, you do the same thing to the second half. The one thing I would advise that you do is when you get to the point where you're cutting off the back and front covers, you need to make sure that that is something that you do very carefully, because you could end up cutting your back cover. And the reason why you may want to use your razor to cut your back cover is because when you get to the guillotine, if you cut too much of the back cover, if you're like me, you may not like that your digital scan of the back cover is going to be smaller than your inside pages. When you use your guillotine, you need to make sure that whatever mark that you use to make your first cut, that your marks are consistent so that when you eventually scan in your book, your pages will all be the same size. The other thing that's important, so that you only do it one time, is after you make your cuts, make sure you flush out all your pages to ensure none of them are still sticky, because that avoids you actually having to go to your setup again to make another cut. It's also important to make sure that your pages are in the right order before you start scanning, because if you scan them in the wrong order, then if you're not that good with the software that you use, it may be a pain to try to reorganize everything in the correct order after you scan them in. Once you cut everything up, then it only becomes a matter of scanning everything in. The program that I use came with my Epson scanner, and it's called Epson Smart Scan. So because this book was a double-sided book, I will have to choose double-sided scan. But first I go into my settings and I make sure I want the settings to accurately reflect what I want to scan. So in my scan settings, then I will set my resolution at least at 300, because the lower the resolution, the faster your scan will go. And in the advanced settings, I make sure I fill my edges with white. And once my edge is filled with white, I go to my main settings to confirm that my settings are the way I want them. And then I will save my settings. Depending on how thick your cover is, it may be wise to first try to scan the cover by itself. So that's what I'm going to do for these covers. Blank pages I usually throw out, but even with the blank pages that you throw out, you have to be careful, because if you want your digital copies of your book to match your physical copies book numbering, then you have to make sure that your blank pages don't account for your physical book's page numbers. With the scanner that I have, I can typically get away with scanning about 10 pages front and back at a time. Once you scan everything in, once it's in your application, you could do one final check to make sure all of your pages are the way that you want them in the order that you want them in. So in this case, because every 10th page seems to be in order, I will be ready to do the next thing. But somehow this page here was scanned in upside down, so I can just easily rotate this page. And then if that page was upside down, then that means another page was probably upside down. So I'll rotate this page. And it appears that maybe all of these are upside down. Let's see, 77, 78, 75, okay. And if this is something that you don't catch once you are ready to save your document, if you go on to the next step, which is what I'm going to show you, using Adobe Pro, it's also easy to just edit your pages. Okay, now that I verify all the pages are in the order that I want them in, I'm going to go to the next screen and then I'm going to save this document. And when I name this document, I'm going to name it as Essential Spanish Grammar. And this software allows me to choose on whether or not I want to save it as a regular PDF or a searchable PDF. And when I save it as a searchable PDF, it's going to use OCR, or optical character recognition, and identify all the text so that this scanned document will be recognized upon saving. But you don't need this software to do that, because nowadays, even if I save this as a regular PDF, Adobe Pro also has this searchable PDF or OCR language recognition option, and you can put your files that are scanned in programs such as Google Drive, and Google Drive software now has the capabilities to automatically recognize the text. But I'm going to go ahead and save it. And so now that my book is saved, I went ahead and opened it in Google Chrome, and because I use OCR, or optical character recognition, I should be able to quickly highlight any sentence. And of course, because I can now highlight any sentence, I can highlight a word, I can right click, I can hit translate, and then this word automatically is translated using Google Chrome. Even though Google Chrome is picking this up and thinking this is Italian, it's actually Spanish. So we can go ahead and change the language. And there we go, Spanish to English, the Peninsula. So at this stage, if you didn't want any bookmarks so that you can quickly get through each of the chapters, then you will be done. But for some of my books, not all of my books, I actually use bookmarks. For this book, I wouldn't necessarily need bookmarks. So if I wanted to go to verbs, I would just type page 25, and that should take me to verbs. And that's what it does. But if I wanted to quickly get back to the table of contents, that's where I start running into problems, and that's what bookmarks are for. So now that I have the document in a PDF format, I'm going to use Adobe to create bookmarks. And even though I've been saying that I have Adobe Pro, I actually have Adobe Standard. It's not the free version, but I have Adobe Standard. And Adobe Standard will allow you to create bookmarks. So let's go ahead and start Adobe Standard and create our bookmarks. So now that I'm in Adobe Standard, I'm going to go ahead and open my file. And now that the file is open, I'm going to create some bookmarks. So the bookmarks are pretty easy to do. The first bookmark that I'm going to create is I'm going to create a cover page bookmark. So I hit the bookmark, I go to plus, add a bookmark, and I'm just going to call it cover page. Now that I created the cover page, I'm going to go to table of contents page, and I'm going to create another bookmark, and I'm going to say table of contents. And now that I have these two, I can go ahead and test them by just clicking on cover page, which should take me to the cover page, and then table of contents, which should take me to the table of contents page, and they both did. Now, if I really wanted to be pedantic about this, I would create a bookmark for each of the chapters, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to create another bookmark for verbs. So I'm going to go to page 25 in this document. And now that I'm on page 25, I'm going to type verbs. I'm going to go back to the table of contents, and I will create another bookmark for special constructions with verbs. So that's page 56. And I'm going to say special constructions with verbs. And then I'll create one more bookmark, let's say for vocabulary building with cognates. Vocabulary building with cognates. And now that that bookmark was created above the verbs and special construction with verbs bookmark, I'm just going to grab the bookmark that I just made and I'm going to drag it down so that it is the last bookmark. And so now I have bookmarks for the cover page, table of contents, verbs, special constructions with verbs, and vocabulary building with cognates. And now that I've created these bookmarks, I can go ahead and just save my document. When I open a book in Google Chrome again, now instead of just having the thumbnails, I can click on the bookmarks and I can now start using the bookmarks that I just created with Adobe Standard. So hopefully you found this video very helpful. If you did, please give this video a like. And if you know someone who wants to digitize their own books, make sure you share this video with them, because like I say, I have a vested interest in seeing my audience study in the most effective way that they can. So I wanted to make this video for you. With that said, until the next video, good luck on your journey to building more useful functional Spanish. Peace.